We are very pleased to have with us right now Katrina Hobbs Everett. It's her first time running for Haverhill City Council, and we're welcoming you to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You know, I'd like to ask you this question right off the bat, and that is that people want good government, responsible government, and everyone running is well-intended. But what distinguishes you from the rest? What can you do you think, that the others can't?
I would definitely say that my background in human services is something that's different than the combination that we currently have with our council. I do have 17 years in human services, varying from youth work to addictions to working with elderly. So I have a pretty eclectic range in my background. And I'd like to bring more issues that are of humanistic nature. So looking at public safety beyond just the additional police officers. So looking at creating a community environment of nonviolence. So not just extra police, but also looking at our gang relations and how we are interacting with our young people and things that kind of lead up the pipe to these systemic problems.
When we take a look at the 36 square miles that we have, and taking into account how many police officers we have in the public safety sector, I guess we are one of the 363 cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts. The ratio of policemen to population is probably the lowest in the city of Haverhill than it is virtually anywhere else in the state of Massachusetts. And the head of public safety, Chief Denaro, has been able to make headway in being able to utilize a lot of technology to stretch that as far as he can. But you can only stretch that so far. So within the confines of the monies that we have to deal with, how would you go ahead and achieve the goals that you happen to be mentioning? Relationship.
That would be my answer. I think technology does help us advance. I think that the police officers do a great job. I'm fortunate to have gotten to meet more of them on a more personal level. Officer Hawk, for instance, who has a real heart for the city, building relationships with people. Officer Moses, who works very well with our youth. The relationship that you build with the community is kind of almost more important, if not as important, as just the security aspects of things. So being able to kind of deter event, like a violent outburst, is important, and that's where a relationship would come in, where technology couldn't reach.
Does that go back to one thing that we had years ago, but I guess budget cuts saw its demise, and that is neighborhood policing, where it was up around the Washington Square area, Fantini Baker area, there was a community police outpost. There was also one that happened to be located up on Winter Street, if I'm not mistaken, as well, but wasn't enough money, time took its toll, and they were shut down. Are you talking about being able to do something of that type and being able to build relationships with the community rather than just drive by in a cruiser?
Yes, I mean that's what I'm speaking of, and I'm not sure what the funding of that was. One of my passions is the Mount Washington area, and I think that that's a perfect example of a neglected area of the city that could be better loved. I think a combination of the police with neighborhood groups, with the constituents of the city themselves, the neighbors, all coming together to try to care about their community more, would lead to a sense of ownership, decreased violence. I know home ownership, socioeconomic status. There's a lot, I guess, kind of wrapped around violence, and one of the things that I'm looking to do is really unpack these issues, because we say terms, and they have deeper levels to them. So public safety, that has other layers to it. And that's all I'm saying, is we really need to kind of have more dialogue, have more relationships, so we can kind of unpack these things to really take a look at what's going on in our city and how to fix it.
If the seeds of dissension that you happen to allude to have already been planted, how do you excise them?
I think that it's twofold. One of them is, again, the focus on the youth. Everything that we should be doing as a city needs to be involving our youth to raise up a better city. The other thing that I think is it's lack of education. I think people don't mean to be ignorant. They just don't know the true definition of that word. So I think that if we have educational dialogue, I can share with you what I know, you share with me what you know, we're both better for it.
When you mention education, you're talking about educating the youth through the school system, and talking about how do you educate the adults or their parents?
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about citywide education. So, for instance, when we talk about addictions or something of that nature, public safety, what does that entail? What does that even mean? You know, there's people that, to me, it might mean something, to you, it might mean something, but we need to all sit down and discuss what that entails, what it means, what it looks like, you know, the aspects of it. There's layers to this, I guess.
How do you get them to sit down?
You have to have invitations. You have to be doing outreach, which is one thing I think as a city we don't do very well. There are certain populations that are, organizations I should say, that are starting to do better, or ones even that have always done good, like Carol Ireland and VIP, have always done great outreach. But it needs to be larger level. So, you know, we have to make it citywide.
One of the things I'd like to recommend to you is the fact of utilizing HCTV as a community access platform to be able to help meet some of the goals that you're talking about, whether through the city council or not, you know, because it's, that's what we're doing here today, you know, from a volunteer standpoint, being able to educate the consumer and the public that with regard to what your views happen to be on and how you might be able to help them. If you could tell us in your run for city council, and we only have a few minutes left, if you could give me an indication in reviewing what some of the votes are that the city council has taken, for example, are there any things that you would have done differently or suggested they go in a different direction from what they decided to have voted upon?
I know this is a little bit of a hot topic, but for instance, the marijuana dispensary, that is something that should have had a larger educational conversation about what it was, how it was going to be run, how it could benefit, pros, cons, letting people know, I don't know, even passing out flyers to let people know this is something that we're going to be talking about. How do you feel about this thing coming to Haverhill? I think that that's something that could have been handled better.
Yeah, that's good. You know, maybe with different forums and different discussions perhaps and something of that type. I know we're very proud of the fact that this program had basically held a debate among those the pro and con on that, taking live telephone calls. We were on for an hour and a half and took 27 phone calls.
That's
large,
awesome.
you know, larger number than many network affiliate radio stations in the Boston area. But that's what I mean by being able to utilize HCTV perhaps as a platform to be able to get the word out that you'd like to go ahead and have done. You know, so you'd like to be able to connect more with people and being able to get them to do, being able to help them in certain ways. Is there some place where the city you think has fallen short of being able to help them? And if you could give a specific instance and what the remedy would be?
I think it's empowering themselves to be able to speak up. So I think that the city has fallen short in reaching out and encouraging people to find their own voice, to bring the issues that they want to talk about to the table. And again, there's a very varying ways that could be done for the outreach. Flyers, small forums that lead to one larger forum, knocking on doors. I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I'd like it to be a collective approach, but I do think that the communication is fragmented.
If I'm not mistaken, you happen to be part of an organization, or you have part of a company or a nonprofit organization that is, is it like self-empowering?
Yes, my nonprofit is PoR, Power of Self-Education.
Okay, so if that's the case, and we're coming up on time very, very short here, I'm just trying to figure that you're asking people to maybe give them the elements to have them help themselves.
Correct.
Rather than have the community step in and say, here's what we're going to do for you.
Yes, I mean, it seems like it's this novel idea, but it's pretty elementary. You know, looking at the issue of poverty, our low-income communities, which I am a low-income resident myself, instead of making plans from the top down, we need to be including the community, and so that it can be raised from the ground up. Very good
Program. I can see that. Katrina Hobbs Everett, thank you very much for being here today. We wish you the best of luck in the election upcoming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.